flag if we feel that it's not a question that we can answer.
Okay, so my question is, are the cuts to the National Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander Services, the NATSILS, the same as were announced in last year's MyEFO?
Yes, Senator.
Exactly the same figure?
Yes, there's been no change since then.
So, Senator, essentially the budget is recording that decision that was made in the context of MyEFO.
Mm-hmm. So is it correct that the quantum of the cuts is $13.34 million over the forward estimates period?
Yes, yes, Senator.
All right. I'm interested to know how the cuts will be distributed across individual services then.
We don't know that yet, Senator. In relation to the cuts, the NATSILS funding will continue until 30 June 2015. There was also funding for the University of New South Wales, and that funding agreement expires on 30 June 2014. The rest of the savings are in the out years, so 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, and we will be determining their impact, will be determined as part of the government's revised legal assistance arrangements. So essentially, all of the current NATSILS agreements are continuing till the 2015, the financial year ending 2015, and at that point in time, new arrangements will be put in place which will implement those savings.
So there haven't been any cuts taking effect up until 30 June 2015?
That's right.
All right. And you've just explained about the 8 ATSILs, but NATSILs includes the coordinating or the national kind of body.
That's right.
Do they have a separate funding contract agreement, and what's happening with that?
Yeah,
Yes,
they
Senator,
do,
they do.
and it will continue until 30 June 2015 as well.
Right, because one of the concerns that I've raised in estimates before is the uncertainty that was there with them in terms of staff being very uncertain about their futures, leaving, preempting, being terminated and so on. So that in a sense then the uncertainty continues for another 12 months, I suppose, in that there's not decisions that can be conveyed at this point about what will happen as at 30 June next year and into the forward years after that. Is that right?
Well, that's, in essence, Senator, that is correct, but it's correct for what we would say is an appropriate reason. So essentially, obviously you're aware that the government has received a number of reports in relation to legal assistance generally, including in relation to ATSIL funding. And so essentially the government is in a position where it can consider that information and to determine what sort of reform it wishes to do in legal assistance, including in relation to ATSILs, commencing from the 1st of July 2015.
Mm-hmm. And last estimates, I think it was, I was asking about any analysis or modelling that might have been done in relation to the cuts and any prediction of incarceration rates of Indigenous Australians and any potential increase in those, because everybody is aware that there's a disproportionate rate of incarceration of Indigenous people in Australia, and people are working hard to turn that around without much success, it seems, at the moment, sadly. So has there been any modelling or analysis since the last time I asked about that?
There hasn't been, Senator.
All right. And the other question I had last time was what provision is going to be made in terms of protecting so-called frontline services, and it wasn't really even clear to me what that means. I don't know if you've got a clearer definition of what frontline services are now, but how will frontline services be quarantined from the cuts that are to take effect next year?
Because the arrangements across all of the legal assistance programs haven't been developed yet and yet to be developed and then negotiated with states and territories, I can't answer that question yet, Senator, other than to repeat the attorney's, perhaps to refer back to the attorney's comments of earlier about that being the government's focus in terms of how legal assistance funding is used.
Thank you. And if it's sort of related to this, it's actually a question about NATSILS, but it goes back to some questions that were being asked earlier in relation to cuts to community legal centres and the cut of $6 million to community legal centres in 2017-18, and the fact that the savings were to to be found in 57 centres across Australia. I think that was the evidence or the information that was given earlier. Am I right on that? Are you following where I'm going with that? So what I'm wanting to know is, will Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander legal services be affected by that $6 million cut?
No, Senator. And since you spoke, you mentioned a figure earlier of $13.34 million. That's the total savings from the Indigenous Legal Assistance Program over the forward estimate. So the community legal centre savings are separate.
Separate, so there won't be any others that at least have been identified at this stage. I mean, I appreciate. No,
Senator. There was the savings at MyEFO and then those in the budget in relation to legal aid, and that's it.
All right. I might, if I don't know, do you want to go to other questions on NATSILS at this stage? Or?
No.
No. All right.
When the minister's here.
Okay,
But
fine.
So I've got questions, or the chairs might have questions.
Well, Senator Wright, if you have any questions on any of the Group 2 things that you think the officials can deal with, that you don't require a ministerial view of, please ask them in your 15 minutes. And
Sure, okay. I've got a few more that I think are information.
Yes.
I might need to try and ask the attorney if
Yes,
it's clear that they're not clearly information. So if I could ask you about the review of National Partnership Agreement on Legal Assistance Services, and I'm just interested to know, I understand that it's complete, and you've indicated that in your answers anyway. When will the review report be publicly available?
So, Senator, that's one of those questions which I have to answer as a matter for government.
Okay, I thought there might be a planned date, that's all, so, all right. No, I think the rest I have to wait until the Attorney General's here, unfortunately.
okay, no, that's fine. Senator Singh.